Today, we're going to talk to one of the OGs in the industry who's going to give us tons of strategy on PPC, Amazon data points, and more. How cool is that? Pretty cool, I think. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Serious Sellers Podcast by Helium 10. I am your host, Bradley Sutton, and this is the show that's a completely BS-free, unscripted, and unrehearsed, organic conversation about serious strategies for serious sellers of any level, in the Amazon or Walmart world. We've got a serious seller back on the show. Not his first time on the show. He's been here before, so it might be a familiar face to you. Liran, how's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me back on. I don't know what episode number this is, but I was episode 3 of the Serious Sellers podcast, so it's great to be back on.
Yep, one of the first completely outside guests. The first episode, if I'm not mistaken, it was Manny Coates himself. Mm-hmm. And I believe the second episode was Kevin King,
right?
Who even at that time was part of Freedom Ticket, not a Helium 10 employee, but still part of the family. Right. And so Liran was the very first person that we chose to go outside of the family. And so it's great to have you back here, and we're in the 300s now, so still It's 3. There's a 3 in there, but nice. Anyways, we wanted to see, catch up to see what you've been up to. Even in those days, you were a big time Amazon seller. You're an educator in the space. You were known for your PPC strategy. And so we talked about a wide variety of things. But the very first thing I want to talk about, which I know we didn't talk about the last time, is, as I said in my introduction, we're trying to make this show not just about Amazon sellers, but about Walmart sellers as well. Mm-hmm. What about you? For any of your Amazon brands, did you ever in the last couple of years also cross-sell on Amazon or on Walmart? I'm sorry.
I personally did not cross-sell on Walmart, but we do work with people who sell on Walmart as well. And it's kind of interesting because just yesterday, Walmart's earnings came out, and I think they had some nice growth in their advertising revenue and online commerce. I think they reached $2 billion in ad revenue, which was a nice growth for them. So obviously Walmart is growing, and so is Walmart advertising. And Walmart's made some good changes recently to their platform, specifically in terms of the advertising. Just to touch on it, it used to be that you had to rank organically in the first 100 some odd positions in order to show up with ads. That's now no longer the case. And also, I think starting in June, they're going to be switching their auction system to be the same as Amazon's auction system. So right now on Walmart, if your competition bids 50 cents and you bid $1, you pay $1, which is terrible. Like on Amazon, you'd pay 51 cents. So Walmart is switching to that platform. So some good positive changes coming out of Walmart as it comes to their advertising and the platform.
With your agency, obviously you deal with, just like you did when you were doing courses and things like that. Well, you deal with so many different people. Anybody else having success on other platforms other than Amazon and Walmart? Like, sometimes it blows me away when somebody say, "Oh yeah, I'm doing like 7 figures on Wayfair." I'm like, Wayfair? What in the world? What about in your experience?
I've seen some sellers do well on Etsy. So I would say that's an interesting platform. I think they're also allowing now, non-handmade. I think it just has to be sort of like classified. So, I think Etsy will be, another growing platform. And I would say really outside of that, it's really Shopify. And I'm actually really excited about D2C because of the buy with Prime that Amazon just recently came out with.
Let's talk about that because that came out a week ago or a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
And then some people, first of all, didn't really understand. Well, first of all, let's explain what D2C is. There's a lot of new people on here, and then what exactly the implications of buy with Prime is.
Yep. So D2C is direct to consumer, and generally that means a brand that is bypassing all other parties to sell directly to the end customer. And even Amazon is not necessarily considered so much D2C because you're going through Amazon's channel, whether it's third-party seller or vendor. But when you're selling on your own website to the end customer, you are getting all the customer data, etc. That is sort of the purest form of direct to consumer D2C. Now, Amazon came out with something called Buy with Prime. And what that means is that right now you can do multi-channel fulfillment with Amazon. That means you can have somebody who sells on Shopify or any platform for that matter, really. Let's talk about Shopify. And Shopify with some integration connects into Amazon, and you can ship to your customer on Shopify with your inventory that's sitting in Amazon warehouse, and you'll just pay a fulfillment fee essentially, and Amazon will ship it to the customer, which is great because you don't have to. You can warehouse, you can keep your inventory together for your Amazon sales and your Shopify sales. You don't have to use a different warehouse. Amazon now is taking it a step further, and they're saying we're going to allow you to put a code on your site that's going to have a little button that says "Buy with Prime." If the end buyer on your website is a Prime customer, they can click on that button. They check out. It's a Amazon checkout. They check out with all their Amazon information and details, which is awesome, which is there. Which, by the way, you could do before with Amazon Pay, which is also a service. But again, it wasn't tied to fulfillment necessarily. But now you can checks out on Amazon, but now it gets fulfilled with 1 to 2 day shipping with Prime. And multi-channel fulfillment was always kind of slow, I would say 3 to 7 days in terms of like until Amazon shipped the product and it got to you. And Buy with Prime allows that customer to get to order on your Shopify store and have the same experience as Prime delivery, getting something really, really fast. What I think that means is that conversion rates on Shopify and other D2C websites, BigCommerce has already said they've 100% are going to allow it because the platform still needs to allow it. We could talk a little bit about Shopify, whether they will or not. But what's essentially going to happen is your conversion rates on your D2C store are going to, I think, skyrocket because you have that Prime feel and the trust kind of people have in terms of buying from Amazon and knowing that it's easy and they get it fast, and you're going to be able to get 1 to 2 day fulfillment from your Shopify store. So I'm very bullish about that and the opportunity. And what Amazon, this is a initiative by Andy Jassy, who's the new CEO of Amazon, and he was head of AWS, and AWS was a underlying cloud, right, of storage that really basically um, is underneath kind of a lot of the internet, right? It maintains a lot of the internet across many, many companies and websites. And what Amazon is trying to do right now really is somebody kind of there's a great article on Stratechery.com that says Amazon as a service. They're taking instead of just being Amazon.com, Amazon is going to power all of e-commerce, right? Or a lot of e-commerce will be powered by Amazon because now Amazon will do the merchant processing, the payment, uh, and also Amazon will do the fulfillment, whether or not somebody shops on Amazon or not, right? And Amazon embeds itself into e-commerce a lot more, which is really smart. It also means Amazon sees kind of the threat of Shopify and D2C, and they want a piece of the action. And who knows if, let's say this pans out and this works, if Amazon will say now we're going to offer all sellers a tool to build their own D2C site, and maybe they take some of that away from Shopify. Um, it's interesting whether or not Shopify will adopt it because their president on an earning or their CEO on an earnings call said, we're very interested in adopting it. And then he walked, I think maybe got
Yeah.
back from the board or something, and he
I
walked
heard
back
about that.
the comments a little bit because what the threat is here is that Shopify just bought Deliver,
Yep.
and Shopify also makes a lot of their money off merchant processing. They charge 2.9% plus 30 cents or whatever it is, right, on merchant processing. And they bought Deliver. They want to do the fulfillment and drive that business. And now Amazon's taking that away with the Buy with Prime if people check out there. So it's a double-edged sword. If they don't adopt it, will Amazon launch something or will people move on to BigCommerce or other platforms where they can use the Buy with Prime button? Will they lose their customer if they don't adopt it? And if they do adopt it, again, they lose some business. But again, I think there's a massive opportunity for D2C to grow based on this Buy with Prime. So I think they will end up adopting it. And I think it could be a game changer for a lot of sellers. And maybe if you haven't thought about going D2C, if you're at 7 figures, I think it's something you should be doing.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're smaller, really depends. How many products
Mhm.
do you have? How successful are those products? Validate and get success on Amazon first, I think. But I really like where this is going with Buy with Prime. I think it's genius, and it's just a brilliant move on Amazon's part.
Yeah, it's the diversification of platforms and DTC and Walmart. I mean, we're having a conversation here that we wouldn't have even had,
Right.
2 years ago, let alone 3 or 4 years ago. And it's just showing how much this space has evolved, and it just goes to the point that guys, you're selling on Amazon, great, but you can't be resting on your laurels here, because the industry is evolving, and you need to evolve with it, or you're going to be left behind. All right, so these are some like cool new things that are in the pipeline here that we definitely want to keep an eye on. Let's talk about some bread and butter stuff here. So in the last couple of years, Amazon itself has come out with a lot of cool data points, a lot of cool filters in advertising that before was only available, or reports that was only available to vendors and things like that. On the strict Amazon side, we'll talk about Helium 10 next.
Yep.
What are some of the top, 2 or 3 new things, be it brand analytics, product
Yeah.
opportunity explorer, search query performance, or
Yes.
top of search function, like all this
Yes.
plethora of new stuff that Amazon has
Yes.
launched in the last year, it seems. What are some of your favorites?
Yeah. So many things. I'll share with one of my favorite reports in PPC that I don't think a lot of people are looking at, and that's the impression share report. It's also new, I would say, probably in the last year or so. It's really important. Impression share report. You can look at it on sponsored products, sponsored brands, and you can really see what is your impressions on a particular keyword compared to your competitors. And so, and you can see those the results with that particular keyword. So you can see what your ACOS is, what your conversion rate is on that keyword, and where you are in impressions. And so you might be looking at a keyword that you're number 3. It's an important keyword, and you have a 30% ACOS with a 10% conversion. Like, maybe you want to push harder on that particular keyword. Now, if you're number 1, there's no reason to push harder. You're already getting more impressions than any other brand. Maybe you can get even higher percentage of share, but you can really, it's a very helpful report to see if you are, you know, pushing on the right keywords, or maybe some keywords that you need to kind of pull back on more. But really, really great report. And I don't think a lot of sellers are utilizing it enough. Now, one of the things along with this, what we do is, if you get a little fancy and you learn pivot tables a little bit on Excel, which you could do with Google, with YouTube. What we do is we also pull a report of all the keywords that we're targeting between sponsored products and sponsored brands, and we create one sheet that shows us all the keywords on the impression share report, their performance, and then whether or not we are targeting that specific uh, search term in um, sponsored product, exact phrase and broad, in headline ads, and in video ads. Okay. And we look at this report and we try to understand. So, and sometimes we'll see, when we audit an account, sometimes we'll see a keyword. You're like number 4, you're getting really good results, and you're not targeting at all. Well, what's going on? It's coming from the auto campaign, but you maybe never moved it over, and you're not managing it manually and able to dial up the bids and get more impressions and do better. And you're already doing well. So I love that report. I think everybody should be pulling that report. If you can, do a pivot table along with, are you targeting those keywords or not, or even look at it separately and find a way to copy and paste it from another Excel sheet. And what your if you're targeting that keyword, I think that's a great report to make sure you're targeting those keywords that are relevant, that you have pretty good results with, that you have room to push further. That's one of my favorite, and I think most important newer type of reports that's available. It's available with sponsored products, sponsored brands as well. Also interesting to see on that report, we have seen some interesting things that you should look out for. So we've seen things with sponsored brands where you're getting a lot of impressions, but your click-through rate is really low. And then we try to identify why. Why am I getting so many impressions here and my click-through rate is low? So you have to go in and see what's happening. Is sometimes your sponsored brand ad will populate on a page, but you're not at top of search, you're on the bottom. And it's considered an impression, I believe, because it populates on the page, even though the person may not have seen it. But your bid is not high enough. So you might be looking at this and saying, I'm number 3 here. I have a lot of impressions, but I'm not getting any CTR here. What's going on? And you might identify a keyword that you really need to push the bids up on in order to actually be visible, because you're not at top of search for sponsored brands, which is where most of the clicks are coming from for sponsored brands, as opposed to like on the bottom of the search page. So that's really important as well. Let's talk about more reports. First of all, there's been some updates in the business reports. So business reports now shows you mobile views. So you have to actually go into your business reports and go to columns and show the mobile sessions. And then you'll be able to see that, first of all, the percentage of traffic on a product from mobile and desktop. It's very important that especially if you have a high percentage of mobile, which I believe what I'm seeing is almost kind of like 60% mobile, 40% desktop nowadays, but depends on products. If it's a very expensive product, people might be researching it more on a laptop, versus their phone. But very important that like your first 60 or so characters, like if you have like 1 ounce or certain things that are important for a person to see that are in there. But now you can see your true conversion rates, where before they were really inflated because what you saw was your total orders divided by only your desktop traffic and not the app traffic. And so now it's really important to go back and evaluate what your real conversion rates are. People had a false sense, I think, of what conversion rates are. Search term query and brand analytics. Really good report. It's a new thing in brand analytics. If you click, you should have something at the top bar. You can click on that and you can actually see real search volume on a week-to-week basis. So I love that report. Because it really helps you see search volume, and it also helps you see conversion rates within a 24-hour period of the person just coming from search. So not coming from product pages, not coming from other sources, outside traffic, etc. Coming just from search. What are your conversion rates? What are the add to carts? Where you might lose people along the way. I think that's a really important one. And again, you can see actual search volume there. And the product opportunity explorer, I would add, is great. You can see some data there you can't see anywhere else, like how many competitors are in a particular niche, how many are using sponsored products, how many new competitors have come in, and you can really start to identify maybe changes within your niche that are happening. So all those things are new, and these are great reports to get more insights. And with these reports, you can really start to see what your market share is on a particular product within the niche. And understand where you are in terms of market share. And you can track this over time and see, am I losing market share? Am I gaining market share? Because there's some brand metrics there, like on the search query report for brand share, for example, what percentage of, on this particular keyword does your brand kind of get a share of the sales? And that's really important to see if you're gaining or losing, because, in some sense, if your sales are down, it could be a trend of the market, like fitness products today. Sales are down from last year on home fitness products because search volume is down. But have you lost market share is a more important metric, right? Because, okay, maybe the pie's gotten smaller, let's say in this particular niche. But if I had 10% share before and I now have 12%, I'm going to look at that as a positive. But if I lost market share, it's a negative. Really, the search volume, the demand is not something that I can control. So you have a lot better insight into what's happening when you start piecing some of these reports together.
Yeah. And that's, what you're talking about there is why we made that tool Market Tracker in Helium 10, is because, I mean, how many times, if we had $1 for every time somebody in a Facebook group says, hey, my sales are down this quarter, anybody else? My sales are down today. Anybody else? Well, guys, if you were actually tracking, it doesn't have to be with Helium 10. If you're using whatever and tracking your market, you'd be seeing, well, the pie got smaller, the pie got bigger. Oh, your piece of the pie got smaller. Yes, you are down compared to your competitors, but everybody kind of does not seem to want to programmatically track their market. They just want to ask in Facebook groups, anybody else's sales down? Speaking of newer Helium 10 tools, you were one of the early adopters of Helium 10. You were probably using Helium 10 before I even was. And
Bradley, I'm proud to say I have 4 Helium 10 accounts.
4 Helium 10 accounts. There you go. It's not one. One's not enough. You guys got to have 4. Oh my goodness. You use some tools that even most people don't, back in the day, like Asing Grabber and things like that. But, in the last couple of years, we've launched about 7 billion new tools, just like Amazon. are you still just using the bread and butter, like Cerebro, Keyword Tracker, Async Grabber, stuff like that, or have you adopted any of the
We've
newer
used
tools?
Market Tracker, so
Okay.
really like that tool. I would say is one of the newer tool. I just saw there was an upgrade to Profits as well, and so that's a tool that I think is really useful.
We now have business reports in there.
Oh, business. Oh, okay.
So the impressions and
Conversion.
the page sessions and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I saw recently Amazon created an API for that. Before
Yep.
there was
Yep.
no API, so
They
that's
always said they would never do it.
right.
We've been asking them that for years because that's one of the biggest asks of our
Right.
Helium 10 customers. Like, man, I always have to go into stinking business reports and in Seller Central to do this, and I want to like correlate it to my keyword tracker. I want to correlate it to this or that,
Right.
and we're like, sorry, like unless we break Amazon's rules and like try and like get a sub account and then like pull it out or something, like we can't we can't really do that. But finally they opened it
I
up.
I think there's been some kind of strategic change with Amazon over the last couple of years where
Hmm.
they just
Hmm.
said we're going to share more data, because
Hmm.
we never thought Amazon would share search volume. Like, well, then you can
Yep.
reverse
Yep.
engineer how much traffic Amazon gets on a monthly basis, and they don't want to release that information, and then they've kind of opened the floodgates. So they must have made some kind of strategic decision. We're just going to open it up, which I think is awesome for sellers. We're heavy users of Cerebro. The reason why, and keyword tracking. That's the reason why we need multiple accounts, because we're running up against limits. On one account, we also kind of manage accounts by teams, and so for the agency, so we like to segment it out by account. But I mean, one of the best tools out there, I think for Amazon sellers is Cerebro, and the ability to really understand keyword research and understand relevancy of keywords, and as well as tracking keywords. I love that now you can see the history of the when you add in a keyword to track, you can also go back and see the history. I know that's a newer thing. I didn't know you've added business reports, which is awesome. And so yeah, we're very heavy users. Obviously, the extension is super powerful, both from just kind of getting, even if it's just some view, but listing. When you see that listing score, it's definitely helpful to see the listing score. And we also like the additional kind of filtering and selection, and now the ability to go straight to Cerebro from the extension, which is also something sort of, I would say, newer that you've added. That's really useful. But in my mind, Helium 10 is like an essential tool. Like, I don't see how you can run if you're private label, right? If you're just jumping on listings as a reseller, maybe not. But even in that case, I think you need it. But it's kind of like an essential tool to really understand. The bottom line is, you're playing kind of like a keyword game when it comes to Amazon, and you want to have those keywords in your listing, and the only way to do that is to understand where sales are coming from. And you could do that with Cerebro and reverse engineering your competitor. So this is like, some people today would say take this for granted, but back in our day, as we become older, we didn't have those things when we
Nope.
first started. On Amazon, like there were keyword.
There's that one guy who had that one shady guy who had some tool, and then it came out that he was like stealing people's
Yes.
accounts when they had a big coupon or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I
Oh, yeah.
remember.
Keyword inspector, I think was the tool or something like that. And yeah, when he was tracking when people had coupons and like a glitch in their coupons on quantity or something, and he was buying their stock using his tool. He was tracking it, buying their stock, and reselling it. And I never
Yeah,
heard from
but
him.
other than that, like if you didn't have that tool, then you pretty much had, and that didn't even tell you ranks or anything. Just kind of told you where things were. But we've come a long ways. We've come a long ways.
It's amazing how much data is now available to today it's almost like you have too many points of data, and you need to decide what should I
Yeah.
focus on, in terms of your business, which I think there's some actually somebody asked me yesterday, like, what are some of the key metrics I should be focused on in my business. And to me, it's like, you want to track your top line sales, you want to track your tacos, ACOS, organic sales, paid sales, and margin, right? Like, at a high level, those are some of the things you should be tracking, and then some other things on a product level, like the keywords, but and tacos. But yeah, Helium, has really become, an essential tool. And Amazon has been adding a lot of data points as well. And I'm sure now Helium, brand analytics, again, in the beginning there was no API, right? They said they wouldn't you were not allowed to use brand analytics data. Now you can pull brand analytics data. There's so much more data that's available to you as a seller.
Yep, absolutely. So let's talk about some just go into some strategy now. We used to just do sometimes a 30-second tip and just one, but let's take the last 10 minutes and just do some quick hitters from you, like some stuff that But actually, before I get into that, I forgot to ask one thing. I always ask this to anybody who has their own agencies when I have them on the show is, as an agency, you guys, it's not like you guys are onboarding brand new Amazon sellers who haven't even launched their first product. Most of them, if not all, are existing Amazon sellers. And so you guys have unique visibility into like, you guys are doing what? Like, so I love to ask, like, what's common amongst your customers where you onboard them and it's a mistake that you think a lot of your customers were making, that you guys obviously correct, but probably a lot of Amazon sellers out there are doing the same thing.
Everybody. So we almost now are auditing almost every single account before we take it on. In some way, for multiple reasons, I'll just share. One, we don't really want to take an account that we don't think we can help. Number one. Number two, sometimes it's a way for us to show the end customer, the end person who's not a customer yet, some of our work before they decide whether they want to work with us at all, and it's added value. So we do a full audit of their advertising account. Takes us 5 to 6 days. We provide that audit back to them, and then they could choose to work with us or not, right? So it's added value. And there's one thing I see in almost every single one of those audits is campaign structure is not the way really that it should be. So what do I mean by that? Meaning, campaigns with 300, 400, 500 keywords. Okay. Shouldn't have that many keywords in a campaign. You're not going to maximize your impressions. Campaigns with mixed match types in the campaign. Again, different CTRs. You can't manage the right goals and budgets at the campaign level when you have a mix of really good and really bad in one campaign. And the biggest thing we see is like, the keywords, there's certain keywords that should just be segmented. Like your highest search volume keyword. If I'm selling a felt letterboard, right? Letterboard should probably, that keyword has so much search volume. That keyword should be in its own campaign with its own budget. It's a very important keyword for me. I also might be willing to allow that keyword to have a different ACOS goal than others. And if you're using software, let's say you're using Atomic or using software for PPC, you're entering in an ACOS goal. And the software is managing that ACOS goal. The more keywords you have in there, the less likely it's managing each individual keyword to that goal. Because what the software tools do is, if I have a 30% ACOS goal in a campaign and I have 20 keywords in there or 100 keywords, they'll manage towards the average. But so it's possible that most important keyword, because there's other keywords that are poor in that same campaign, is not allowed to spend because it's bringing down the bids on everything to bring the ACOS down. So we really see, and when you have that keyword that has a ton of search volume mixed in with long tail keywords, that keyword will suck up most of the budget. And long tails, which have less search volume, but sometimes much higher buying intent because they're very specific, right? Felt letterboard 8x8, right? Example like sizes or whatever, right? That are less searches. Well, you want to get traffic for that because you might have a better conversion rate even on that than just felt letterboard. But mixing in that high search volume keyword along with that lower long tail keywords together, in my opinion, is not the way to structure campaigns properly. And we see a lot of that segmentation problems. And in my opinion, one of the keys to successful PPC campaigns is the right segmentation process. So don't mix your match types. You don't have to have, not every keyword needs its own campaign, but start out by doing your research and take all your keywords that are relevant and sort them by search volume and a relevancy. And take the top keyword and put it in its own campaign. And then maybe take the next 3 or 4 most important keywords that have high search volume, put them in its own campaign. And then maybe the next 10 in their own campaign. And then from there, go in groups of like 20 to 30, because the long tail keywords don't spend as much, don't have as much traffic. And if you start out that way in your structuring, that's going to be really helpful. Some other tips are, I believe.
Well, I have a question on that.
Yes.
Let's say you didn't know it was going to be one of your top keywords. Like maybe because you probably know if you're using Cerebral, you probably know what's your top keyword. But then
Yes.
sometimes the market changes where
Yes.
the main keyword
Moves.
in 2018 is not the main keyword in 2019.
Right.
So let's say in 2019 or whenever, a year later, now you realize, hey, this other keyword is now the main keyword. I have it just in one of my exact manual campaigns with 20 other keywords.
Right.
Now, since it has so much history in that campaign,
Yes.
do you take it out? Do you isolate it, but then keep it active in the old one just in case that new one doesn't get traction? Because at least in the old days, I remember that sometimes you would try and put a keyword into a new campaign and it just wouldn't get any traction at all.
Right.
Or what's your strategy there?
Right. So you could do one of two things. If the other keywords there are not so important, you could do the opposite. You can keep that keyword and move the other ones out, for example. Okay, so that's one option. Otherwise, what I would say is I would move it into a campaign. I'd pause it, and if it doesn't get traction, I'd unpause it. Typically, we do see that it does get traction, and it may take a little bit of time because there is that factor of campaign history. So you're right. Um, but we typically after a couple weeks, you should start seeing it, and raise the bids, and you can do some things to give it a push, if you need to. But ultimately, yes, I would isolate. I would isolate that campaign again. If I have, you know, 1,000 key, a lot of many other keywords there, and some of them are important, etc. I'd probably move that one. But you can always turn it back on in that campaign if something doesn't happen. But I would move the keyword ultimately. The other thing that we do is, we don't start still when we interview people to work at our agency and we ask them, how do you start off campaigns? They'll say, well, I start with auto. I let Amazon find the keywords and then I move them over. And that's very, very old strategy. And some people still do things that way. We always start with manual research. All the keywords that we put in the manual campaign, we negate off the bat in the auto campaign because we want to control them on a manual basis. And when we harvest keywords from auto and move them over, we negate those keywords in the auto campaign again because we want the control on the manual campaign. So that's another thing we see. And again, it's part of the reason why we sometimes, and again, with certain software tools, etc., you can even automate that. What our default is 2 conversions. Once we see 2 conversions, we move it over because one can be a fluke, and our default is 2 conversions to move something over. But that's another reason why we see search terms on the impression share report that you're not targeting at all, right? And you have a lack of control when those things are in auto. So one of the things we see sometimes is like somebody's highest spending campaign is auto. Well, you have you're controlling 4 targeting types that within each of them have hundreds of keywords or ASINs, and you have very little control. So in my opinion, as PPC has gotten more complex, as competition has gone more, more competitive, the more granular you need to be in your campaigns. Another thing we see sellers not doing is harvesting across campaign types. Okay, so people harvest from auto and a broad phrase and a phrase match of a search term back into exact. We actually added back as exact, phrase, and broad. When we see a search term that converts, we add it across all 3. How about harvesting across campaign types? Something converts over in my sponsor brand video campaign search term. Maybe I don't have that in my sponsored product campaign for the same product. I want to move it over. Something converts, something harvests in my sponsored product. I want to move it over to my sponsored brands. So you want to really harvest across same product with, within sponsored products, but then you also want to harvest, we know, within sponsored brands, sponsored display product targeting, for example, to sponsored product. And then one more thing is this, again, many people may know this, is broad match in sponsored brand is not the same as broad match in sponsored product. Amazon sees, and I'll tell you why. Amazon sees sponsored brand, even though we don't see it that way. Amazon sees sponsored brand as more of a top of funnel strategy. So just to explain, what does that mean, top of funnel? If you have a funnel, right, a physical funnel, and at the top is wide, right, and at the bottom gets small. So at the top, and the top, you can put a lot of things in at the top, right? So you're casting a wide net at the top, but it may not be as targeted. And then towards the bottom of the funnel, something is a lot more targeted and much more likely to convert. Amazon sees sponsored brand as more of a brand awareness play. Okay, similar to DSP in a lot of ways, which we could talk about. But Amazon sees sponsored brand as a brand awareness. This may not drive as much sales, but you're getting a lot of people to see your brand and brand awareness, which, because they view it that way, they take a lot more leeway in the keywords. Meaning, the keywords you're putting in your broad, if you're putting 3 or 4 words, those 3 or 4 words do not have to be in the search term for it to for Amazon to show it on sponsored brands, but they do in sponsored product. So one of the things we do is we add a little plus sign, which makes it a broad match modifier for sponsored brands on the keywords, and that broad match modifier makes it equal to what a broad match would be in sponsored products. Every single one of those keywords has to be in the search, not in that order, like a phrase, but they have to be in there. And that's a big thing we see in terms of um, a lot of wasted spend in sponsored brand campaigns. So all of these things hopefully are actionable that you can go back into your campaigns and look at and see. And again, we typically work with sellers that are kind of spending closer to 10,000 a month in ads, 7, 8,000, closer to 10,000 a month in ads. And if you're in that category, we can do an audit for you, whether you decide to work with us or not. We can help you identify these things.
Love it, love it. Now, how about maybe just one last 30-second one, like just a quick hitting strategy or tip that you think people should take advantage of? Doesn't have, I mean, if it's PPC, great, but it can be about anything.
Well, I'll share 2 things. Number one, top of search strategies. Top of search, will have a higher cost per click, but because the conversion is so good, on average, our clients see a better ACoS in top of search than not using top of search. So that. But I'll share something else where I think Amazon is going. Building up your brand followers, I think, is an underutilized strategy right now. Amazon recently added customer engagement where you can send messages out. If you have 1,000, they recommend if you have at least 1,000 followers, you can send a message out to those followers. But the follow button is now on Amazon Posts. It's now in your store. I saw something where, Prime Day on mobile, if you're following a brand, you're going to see their products there on your mobile if you're following them. So I think that is, I'll share a few things here. So I think that is something you should be on a regular basis. Treat posts like your social media. On social media, people post once a day or even more, maybe, or 3 times a week. You should do posts regularly. Post is still free. Okay. It probably won't be free forever once it gets mass adoption. And once you're going to get more tools out of it, followers and showing them deals, etc. This is where Amazon is going. And I think people don't have this strategy. And you easily, with a graphic designer on a low cost basis, you can have them crank out, take your images, use Photoshop, crank out. I wouldn't be too worried about what the caption is and stuff. You just got to get it out there, get people to see it, click it, follow the brand. I think you'll get a lot out of it. Drive traffic to your storefront, right? Because that's also where you can get, brand followers. And lastly, we're doing a lot of influencer marketing. And I think just my tip on influencer marketing is it's hard to track. What do I mean by that? We're using Amazon attribution, but Amazon attribution is clunky. So we'll run TikTok ads, for example, or Facebook ads into Amazon. We'll see 1,000 clicks on Facebook and 700 clicks on attribution. So we see on average like only 70% of the traffic shows up in attribution. The sales take time to come in. And then when we work with influencers, especially on TikTok, people don't click the link because the link is only in the bio maybe for a week and then it's gone and it's not in the thing. So people come and search the brand. So if you're doing influencer marketing, we figured out early, you have to track multiple data points. Okay. So now we're tracking, okay, has BSR changed? Are people using the coupon, attribution, and branded searches? So we chart out because you can look at brand analytics if you're showing up in branded searches or not, or search query performance, right? You can now get these data points from Amazon and we put on a chart. So we've seen where we don't see attribution, we don't see any sales there. We've seen some sales increase, and then we see branded search that your brand name was not even on the brand analytics, search terms. It wasn't in the 2 million or whatever it is. And now we start to see hits of it coming up. And so we know that the influencer is driving, but if we only looked at attribution, we would say this isn't working. And so that's like another overall tip. And I think there will be more and more opportunities with influencer marketing coming up, and maybe in a year from now you'll be doing that to your website because you have buy with Prime, right? So lots of opportunity. One last thing, I spoke to a seller yesterday that built their D2C brand clothing, $2 million just off brand ambassadors and influencers, 80% of their business, and they're only paying influencers with commission. Only with commission. They negotiate it, 20% commission to influencers, 10% to brand ambassadors, and they have a 4x ROAS just on their business with influencer marketing. So I think that's another trend. I think that's going to continue to grow.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, Liran, thank you so much for joining us. Now, if people want to reach out to you guys to get some help with their Amazon or just to ask some questions, how can they find you guys on the interwebs?
Yeah, sure. So incrementumdigital.com is the website. We also launched, if you go under Incrementum Digital on LinkedIn, make sure it's not the Australian company. There's so I think you search incrementumdigital.com. We launched a LinkedIn newsletter we're doing weekly with just like tips, added value, some of the posts we're putting out there. It's also fun. It's got some GIFs and some fun stuff, updates. And so we're putting out a lot of content, from on especially a lot on LinkedIn, and it's easy for us when somebody on our team shares something, we share it on the LinkedIn profile. But yeah, social channels, you could obviously follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And I typically do answer every single DM. So if you reach out, maybe I could try and help.
That's awesome. And if you guys are not sure which company it is, you can also just check they're one of the Helium 10 and the sellers. What do we call it? We just changed the name. Seller Solutions Hub. So guys, go to hub.helium10.com and Incrementum Digital is right there. If you're already with them, make sure to, another thing we just added is where you can leave reviews, to the agencies and service providers you use. So make sure if you guys are using them and, hit them up with a review right there so other people can take advantage of that. But Liran, thank you so much for joining us. It was a strategy-filled episode, which we always like here, and we appreciate it. We'll be seeing you probably at the Sell and Scale Summit, hopefully.
Yes,
you'll be at.
I hope obviously to see you, but anybody listening, if you're there, I heard the inside term is SS3 from the Helium.
Yes, S3, Sell and Scale Summit. So you guys want to join us out there at the Sell and Scale Summit, make sure to go to h10.me/S3, and you can save $100 off of the entry fee by using the coupon code S3BS100, S3BS100.
Yes. So hopefully I'll see you there. And I'm looking forward to that Nelly performance.
All of us who are
old,
Yeah, I was trying to think of another word here, but that's pretty much it.
Wise.
All of us who are old school will definitely be digging that. So thank you so much, and we'll see you there in September.